Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Heritage Digital Academy Live, Building Digital Sustainability. I'm really glad that you've been able to join us today for what we hope will be a really informative and collaborative day. I'm Jonathan Chevallier. I'm the CEO of Charity Digital, and I'll be your host for this keynote panel session, which will be addressing what's next for the heritage sector. Now, before we move to the roundtable, I want to just say a few words to introduce today. If you're seeing and hearing me, then you've successfully navigated Hubbelow, which will be our platform for today's event. Please feel free to introduce yourself to your fellow attendees through the chat function, which you can access by clicking the speech bubble on the menu on the right of the screen. Now, setting the context for today, those of us who've been working within the Heritage Digital Academy recognise the significant challenges of the last 3 years. Obviously, we saw the COVID pandemic, followed pretty quickly by the cost of living crisis. But we also think that digital can play a real major role in enhancing organisational sustainability. And today's programme has been put together with 7 different sessions to explore digital sustainability. We start with this keynote, then we've got sessions on quick wins, both looking at those through content repurposing and quick wins with content calendars. We'll then have a further panel on testing and experimentation with digital, and Naomi Korn on copyright compliance. And then we'll be finishing off with an incredibly important looking at how to use your technology spend to maximize delivery against your organization's objectives. More details on all of these sessions are available in Hubbelow under the sessions menu. And you can join as many or as few sessions as you like. We've also got in the day for some networking. So there's a slot there at 2:20, and you can get into the networking room using the network menu. Now, moving to this panel, I will be reflecting on what is next for the sector when it comes to digital. Generally, the sector saw great progress through the pandemic as people were forced to use more digital tools, and this was very much reflected in last year's DASH survey. What we want to do today is reflect further on those points, but also reflect on what's changed over the last year, because obviously digital is a constantly moving area. So I'm pleased now to introduce my 3 guests who are giving us some reasonably broad representation within these islands. So first of all, from Wales, we have Rachel Adams, Managing Curator of the Firing Line Museum of the Queen's Dragoon Guards and the Royal Welsh. Rachel started working in museums as a volunteer at the age of 15, and after graduating with an archaeology from university and an A in museum studies, worked in local authority independent museums for 22 years, managing the Firing Line Museum of Cardiff Castle, independent museum reflecting the history of the infantry and cavalry. Welcome to the stage, Rachel.
Good morning.
Next, we have Margaret Henry. We have Margaret Henry, Northern Ireland National Lottery Heritage Fund. Margaret's been head of engagement for the National Lottery Fund in Northern Ireland since May 2021. Prior to this, she was the CEO of Thrive for 7 years. Thrive is a cultural charity based in Northern Ireland, and in this role, she led the Thrive audience development with responsibility for partnerships, evidencing impact, and embedding sustainability. And prior to Thrive, Margaret has extensive marketing, branding, and change leadership experience, including 13 years working in the BBC. Welcome, Margaret.
Thanks, Jonathan. Nice to be here from a sunny Northern Ireland.
And then finally, we've got a late change to the programme because we were going to have Maureen McMillan from the Eriskay Historical Society in Scotland, but unfortunately she's not been able to join us. So very kindly, Delphine Jasmine Belisle, Head of Membership and Development at the Heritage Alliance, is joining us. I've been working with Delphine on various heritage digital initiatives for nearly 3 years now. She's got really great knowledge of the sector and has been driving various digital initiatives within the Heritage Alliance as well. So I think her expertise is going to be a great addition to the panel. Welcome, Delphine.
Hello. So yeah, apologies. It's just a French Canadian accent rather than a beautiful Scottish one, but I'll try to do.
Yeah, you're giving us international university, so that's brilliant. So in the on the questions in at any time, and then we'll move to those partway through the session. So I want to start by really asking each panelist to just explain a little bit more about their organisation and their approach to digital. So can we start off with you, Rachel?
Absolutely, yeah. I would describe my organisation as comprising a group of very enthusiastic learners. I don't think we are fully where we want to be in terms of how to use digital heritage and digital technology. We've obviously traditionally used digital technology for more of the behind the scenes activity and management activity. But in actual fact, COVID for us was a prime opportunity to move forward in using digital technology to check with our audiences and actually have a presence, because we were closed relatively early in the COVID process. And we found that our organisation was closed between 18th of March until the end of May 2022. So we had a very long period of closure where all of a sudden the only way that we could actually get our heritage content out there and to with our audiences was to try and embrace new forms of digital technology and new forms of engagement.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel. Let's go to Margaret now.
Hi, thanks, Jonathan. So obviously I am one of a number of people working in the National Lottery Heritage Fund. I'm based in Northern Ireland, but as you know, we cover the UK. And in terms of digital, we've obviously had our Digital Skills for Heritage initiative that I know you and Delphine have been very instrumental in as key partners over the last couple of years. And that's been, you know, a £3.5 million investment that we've put into trying to meet the challenges that the sector were facing prior to everything that went on, and indeed through everything that went on in the last couple of years and now into the future. So that's been over 65 projects that we've been supporting, and that's in addition to helping projects that are coming forward to us for applications through our open programs to see how digital can enhance and develop those projects as well and increase access, particularly to those people who normally maybe wouldn't access heritage. So digital really important to us in terms of how we support our applicants and the beneficiaries of our projects, and then also important to us as an organisation as well, and how we use digital to work with the sector, to work with the public, and indeed to communicate among ourselves as well. Having just come from our staff conference last week in Manchester, and we were using some digital channels there to get us all having, for the first time in a long time, a really good conversation in the room. So yeah, National Lottery Heritage Fund, really important investment in digital, which I'm sure will continue into the future.
Thanks, Margaret. And now, Delphine, if you could introduce yourself and the Heritage Alliance.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Jonathan. So the Heritage Alliance, we're a membership body, but also a sector support body for the heritage sector across the UK. And when I think about digital, I think about there's two sides to it. There's one of it from our strategic vision for the sector. It's an enabler. So we really see that actually digital technology can help put the heritage sector on the map, enable us to save time, enable us to connect across the country, across the sector. And it, help all of us becoming more resilient. So that is the first part of our relationship with digital, which is why we partnered in Heritage Digital Academy, and also in the Digital Heritage Hub. If you haven't had a chance, definitely worth a visit as well. But then we're also a tiny charity ourselves. And I've had to learn in the last 2 years how to figure out what the CRM means, let alone how it works. Yesterday, I got very excited because I managed to get an Excel formula to not explode on me. So we are also in the midst of that journey ourselves. So I would agree with you, Rachel. We certainly are like keeping up with the time by, you know, the grip of our teeth, trying to provide everybody an experience, but also make us more resilient thanks to digital technology, thanks to a digital approach to some of our thinking.
Brilliant. Thank you, Delphine. And I've got a small apology to make because I understand my connection was cutting earlier on. One of the challenges with digital, I think we all recognise that, is that internet connections can be variable. I do have a high bandwidth connection and I closed everything else down, but hopefully it's okay now. Anyway, let's move forward. It's great to have those introductions. What I want to do is our first general question. Start this one with Margaret. Where is digital confidence and skills now, a year on from Dash within the sector as a whole?
I'm very conscious that my main experience is in Northern Ireland, and one of the kind of characteristics that we have here is a lot of very small organisations. But having looked at the results from the Dash survey, I don't think we're that out of step with the rest of the UK. And I think the short answer is it's still on that continuum. I think there are some organisations who feel reasonably confident now with digital, but I think those organisations who maybe were propelled into using digital more because of the COVID pandemic, I think while their confidence is probably still at a decent level, I think the struggle now and the confidence is how do we balance both? How do we offer both a good digital experience, use digital to help our resilience as an organization, but also respond to the fact that, you know, people are coming back now and maybe want different things when they're coming back into physically visiting heritage sites, museums, etc. So I think the confidence is okay, but I think the skills that are needed now are slightly different from what we needed when we were in the thrust in the midst of the COVID pandemic and we were sort of forced to using digital. So I think that's kind of where the sector is now. There's a whole new set of challenges and need for skills coming out.
Brilliant. Rachel, what's your take on that?
I would say the level where we are is very mixed, because we've got a mixture of staff and volunteers, some who have massive digital experience, and then we've even got the other side of that with no digital experience whatsoever. So COVID was a real journey for us, because we were having to get people who traditionally in their jobs wouldn't even have done anything with digital technology, but we were having to get them to try and incorporate that so that they could carry on working with the museum during that period. I think people have become more confident, and what we've seen as an organisation is that there's this great opportunity with some of the younger members of our team to work with the older members of our team to help upskill them in those areas as well. And that has a knock-on impact of really creating a fantastic working environment where there's peer mentoring and support and people working together and collaboratively. And I think that's been a really positive thing for us.
Yeah, you make some really good points there, definitely about staff, different members of staff working together as well. I think that's a good theme to develop a little bit more. Delphine, maybe you could give me your views on that in terms of what's the role of staff, trustees and leaders in an organisation's digital journey.
It's one I've been spending a lot of time thinking about, because we were quite heavily involved with the Dash survey, and that revealed things that actually how people felt about their different parts. When it comes to trustees and volunteer, I find it's fascinating because they are absolutely at the heart of what the sector, you know, of the sector's journey. I mean, so many volunteers support the heritage sector, whether they're sorting out steam trains, building dry stone walls, taking care of a landscape, taking care of a visitor site. And very often they've not been as supported as the staff in the last few years because we've been, you know, trying to just keep the wheel on the wagon going. I am coming up with fantastic English expressions today. Just apologies for that. So I think it's really important to get those people involved, because when we think about what people want to do with digital, which is reaching new audiences and helping the organization operate better, we need to bring them in. And I absolutely love what Rachel is saying, because actually it's about using digital as the mean to create connections, using it as just as the enabler that actually will reinforce that feeling of community across organization and across the sector. And leaders, well, leaders are very often feel like they have to have all of the answers and all of the knowledge and all the tech. And what we've discovered actually is people are very confident to just hear from their leaders, like, tell me the vision and I'll make it happen. And that in a way is also interesting with the trustee element as well, because trustees are, I've got that long-term strategic vision, but they've also got that leadership role. So it's interesting to see that actually trustee and leaders will need to be equipped how they can think about the vision and then, empower their team to deliver it. And I've seen fantastic example around the sector of that happening.
Brilliant. Thanks, Delphine. Maybe I could ask you, Margaret, to add to that what your perspective on the role of staff, trustees and leaders is.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the one hand, as Delphine has outlined, they're slightly different, but at the same time, they all need to come together. And that vision point that Delphine mentioned, that's your North Star to orientate those different groups towards what your organization wants to achieve. And then, how you use digital kind of depends on what it is you're setting out to achieve. But I certainly think for trustees at the moment, the resilience of organizations with everything that we're facing with the cost of living crisis has yet again, is foremost to their minds. So for them, as well as, delivering the vision of the organization, how can digital be used in a way to help with sort of managing staff pressure, staff workload? I know a number of organizations who've started to look at how can they automate some of their processes. How can they, even things as simple as, how you run your accounts, how you, manage all of that side of your business. How can some of the digital solutions that are on offer now, that are cheap and user friendly, how can they help with what is a huge challenge around just making the books balance at the moment? So I think trustees are starting to move into some of that space, along with sort of chief executives, leaders of organizations. And I think that's an important and very practical use of digital that can help to underpin and enable resilience at this stage, this time.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm really interested also in what the sector needs to help it innovate. Maybe start with you on this one, Rachel.
I think we're an independent museum and we're based within a local authority venue. And what that really kind of illuminates to me is that there is an inconsistency in resourcing, time, capacity across different organizations. And I know it's the thing that we struggle with the most. We lost members of staff during COVID, and it meant that we were having to do the same amount of work, if not more, with less people. And what I really would like is just more time, more capacity, more support to making things happen. I think Margaret was just saying about like the really practical thing. Leaders have used digital technology. I know in my organization, they've taken a very practical approach about, do we really need to all meet in person for every single board meeting, and can we make technology work for that to free up our time as a working organization so that we're not spending all our time physically in meetings? And I think that's just the biggest thing for me, resourcing and capacity.
Yes, I can echo that also within our organisation. How about you, Margaret? What do you think are the key things to help the sector innovate?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can't ignore that very real pressure around capacity that Rachel has spoken about, that you can't get away from. So, that would certainly help. But I also think, you know, we talk about this a lot and maybe pay lip service to it, but permission to fail as well. You know, being innovative is risky. We need to kind of be clear about approach to that risk. It needs to be managed risk, but we also need to take risks. And then sometimes it just won't work, but you will always learn, even from, as we know, the stuff that doesn't work. In fact, as we know, you learn more from the stuff that goes wrong, unfortunately, even though you get more gray hair. But so I think just that permission to take risks and permission to fail. And I think given everything we've been through and are going through, it's very easy to become really risk averse, because you just want to hold tight. And you are struggling with staff capacity and staff pressure, but we've got to try to support each other, to be brave, to take those risks, and maybe not get it right every time, but to learn and to move on if we can.
Can I add to that, Jonathan? Because I totally agree with what Margaret just said, and I think we've got to get at organisations to share the things that go wrong, not just the things that go right, and communicate about that, because that is one giant collaborative learning experience when we openly hold our hands up and say, we tried to do this and actually it was an absolute mess, but these are the things that we learned from it. I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. I want to pick up on a theme that a number of you touched on there, and this is this kind of capacity issue, shortage of digital skills. So I'm really interested in what heritage organisations can actually do to tackle this skills gap. Maybe start with you on this, Delphine.
Well, it's interesting because what I kept thinking, just listening to Margaret and Rachel, and you know, just to highlight as well that element of piloting. We're actually exploring in a panel later this afternoon, so do jump in for that panel as well in early afternoon. I think it's all about people. Very often we think about digital skills, or we only think about digital skills when we've got a problem in the organization. We've got a problem, we need to fix it. Who are you going to put in training, or to go do an extensive Google search or find tools to fix this problem? And I think actually, if we flip this and start thinking about the people engaged in the sector and how do we raise the bar for everybody, that is absolutely the first place to start. Let's start talking about digital skills. When we do our appraisal, is that something you want to learn? Is there something when we recruit? Is there, what are new skills that you bring? Because often people will bring a lot from their background, from even their personal lives. So that is certainly one part. People learn from people, and I think as well, there is something around skill gaps. A lot of organization, I think the capacity problem, as much as I would love to say we'll be able to resolve it anytime soon, it's not going to be the case. So it's making sure people are aware of, because there's so many fantastic resources that are really easy to use, that are really fast, but people don't always know when and where to get from them. So I think we need to make sure that the whole ecosystem know how it can support each other.
Yeah,
so
I think that resources point is important. You're right. I mean, there are resources from all the Digital Skills for Heritage initiative. You get them on our website. They link through to the websites of our partners, yourselves, who've been creating great resources. And I think, we don't get time. People don't get time to have a look at those things, and even just trying to carve out time. Because I think even more than being digitally skilled, I think curiosity is one of the best skills that you can have in your team and in yourself. And then just that curiosity to go off and try and find out a little bit more, whether it's watching the video that's there or whatever it is. But I also think Delphine's right about people as well. And certainly we find in Northern Ireland, sometimes buddying people up, somebody's going, we're on even something like Twitter, we just don't really know what we're doing. Right, we'll go and chat to Mary. They decided they needed to use Twitter for a specific reason. You should have a reason in mind if you're going to use a particular channel, and they can just talk you through how to do a thread, the really simple stuff, how to put a picture up with text, etc., etc. And sometimes just that 10 minutes, and then that just gives people that little bit of confidence to go ahead and have a play and have a go. So we are all busy, but I know this is a really supportive and collaborative sector. We've said that already today. So just even that 10-minute conversation with someone from the museum down the road or whatever can sometimes just set you off on a positive path.
Brilliant. Thanks, Margaret. Rachel, do you have anything to add on tackling the skills gap, digital skills gap?
Coming back to people, I think one of the most important things that I found that we did was that we actually just took the time to do a skills audit with our staff and volunteers, and we found out loads about people who knew how to do certain things that we never realized before that they knew how to do it. And then that became like a really great little pool of kind of having an expert or somebody who knew about something that everybody could go to and refer to. So that was like really illuminating. And we did that as well, our board of trustees. And I'm really chuffed because the trustees did actually fill in the Dash survey. So that was a way of our staff getting to know our board members. And I think sometimes it feels like there's a massive gap between governance and the operational people on the floor. So I think in a way it kind of brought those two groups together.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. Now we've got quite a few questions coming in from the floor, so I'm keen that we have some time to address those. First one I've got here from Anthony is, how do you support organisations with no web presence? Who wants to take that? Margaret, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I kind of have a view on this, and maybe others won't share this, that you don't have to have a web presence. You don't have to have a website. I think lots of organizations feel you have to have a website, and if you don't, that's it. You know, you don't have a means of communicating. In fact, for some organizations, a website isn't the right way to go at all. So I wouldn't panic about not having a web presence. And again, it's kind of a repeat of what we said. What I go back to say is, what is it you want to achieve? What is it you want to communicate, and who with? And then choose the appropriate digital approach or method for that. And maybe it is Facebook, might work for you. Maybe it's just Twitter. Maybe it's concentrate and do the one thing well. And don't worry about, we need to have this whiz-bang website and this flashy website. I know lots of organizations who don't, but who have really great digital communications, for example, who are still able to get their key messages out, and who are still able to get content shared as well. So I wouldn't worry about it, but I would think about what it is you want to achieve, who you want to communicate. Pick a channel or channels and just do that really well, would be my view. Yeah,
that's a really great answer, Margaret. I'm going to move straight along to another question now, because I think you covered all the bases really well there. Question from Vicky saying, is there more we can be doing to monetize our digital content? Maybe Rachel, I think you have
I'm sure of it. I know from perspective, we're starting to look at how we can use digital technology to have conferences where we don't need the physical space, but we can have like an online forum whereby we can monetize it through a ticket sale. We're also looking at things like digitization of images and how they relate to a retail offer as well. I think it's all unique to the organization and unique to your community and your user group. And the main thing is, are you providing what the people who use you want? That's the most important thought.
Yes. Delphine, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I think it's it's the £100 million question, isn't it? How can you make money from digital? I think we've all pondered that. What I would say is there's some great resources available as well to help you start thinking about this. So I would definitely recommend also attending the session with Naomi later today, because Naomi, with that focus on copyright and IP, it's not just about protecting it, it's also saying about how can you make the most of it. So I would definitely recommend having a look at the Heritage Digital Hub, because we had a panel on that topic and various webinars and some templates. And also on they're very similar titles. We've got the Heritage Digital actually website, and then we've got the Digital Heritage Hub. And there's also, again, a section that talks about how can you make, you start thinking about generating income from resources you've already got. And I think that's often the case, especially for organizations with fantastic collections. There are ways to think about this differently. So definitely, as I said, there are resources out there.
Great. And one addition I'd also make to that is it's always worth considering the idea of sponsorship as well. An commercial organization associating their name with some of your content. That's a model that we follow in Charity Digital, and that works for us. But I think it's as Rachel says, different answers will work for different organizations. Let's go to another question. So what are the pros and cons of virtual and augmented reality? I'm not sure which of our panel have used these technologies, so I'll see who puts their hands up.
No.
Delphine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm happy to start with that one, because I think the biggest pitfall with virtual and augmented reality is trying to do it for technology's sake.
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest problem. The biggest opportunity is it really brings a different way to tell a story. And it will just help people that might not have been your traditional audience. And let's be honest, we all want to increase our audience. When I used to run a visitor attraction for many years in North Yorkshire, that's always your biggest challenge. So how are you going to bring through the door the people that haven't ever been interested to come through the door? And that's where sometimes that will just give people a glimpse, whether they're on your site and you're using augmented reality in that space, or whether you're out of sight and using virtual reality. So I think it is an opportunity. I wouldn't say to go with it without support. It's definitely one where you want to tap the shoulders of others that have done it, and also organizations that know how to do it. But don't just do it because you think that's what's going to bring you the youngsters, as I said, without really thinking about what's the story you want to tell.
Yeah. I mean, I would 100% agree. And it absolutely has a role, but you do need to think first and foremost, it's the quality of the story that's going to hook people in, and the relevance of the story to whatever audience it is you're going after, whether it is that younger audience, which we know can be hard to engage. And I also think, these technologies are moving on all the time, and you can get caught up in almost an arms race, trying to make it bigger and brighter and better. And that can suck a lot of resource, both time, effort, money, and maybe not for, the best return. So I would be, very careful about going about it, but absolutely talk to people who've done it and who will hopefully be honest about how it did or maybe didn't work for them, before you go down that road. But if you get it right, and if you've got that story that's the right story for your audience, and you can deliver it in that way, there's no doubt it can open up new audiences. But I would say tread carefully.
Yes, wise words there. Got a few more questions as well, so I'm going to keep moving through these. So Simon asks, what experience do the panel have of free or nearly free cloud solutions? What do you use it for? Emails, file sharing, collaboration?
I'm just thinking,
who wants to
can't you answer that one, Jonathan? Because let's be honest, you are the tech specialist. I mean, I'm more than happy to try to have a go, but you're the best placed one to answer it.
I'm happy to add in as well, but maybe you go first. I think all different organizations will make different solutions.
I think there's some well, I'm not gonna lie, especially when you're a charity, because that gives you a lot of extra perks. There's a lot of resources that have now got really good twists for charities, like Canva is fantastic to enable you to create quite professional looking designs and at pace, and that there is if not a significant discount, I think it could be even entirely free for charities. And another one I'm thinking of, but that is, you need a stomach for it. But you've got even like big players like Salesforce, which is not automatically a CRM I would recommend for any small charity, and you do need a consultant to set it up, but they are actually geared up to help. but then plain old Google. Like, I love a good Google Jamboard, and it didn't cost me anything. And I created that, and be able to collaborate over Google Forms and a Google document. And later this afternoon, my colleague Danny is going to talk about how we created literally a Google Doc, and we literally didn't have time to have any fancy analytics or anything like that. We just wanted to pass information to the sector, so we plugged that in. It didn't cost us anything. So sometimes just using what's at our fingertips. And I said, yeah, I wouldn't sniff at Google, good old Google.
Any of the other panelists have anything to add in their experience?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I know in the small cultural charity that I worked with before I joined the fund, we were really trying to collaborate and use just, even just Microsoft Office. I mean, there's so much going on in there that enables you to share and create things. And, it required quite a discipline to tidy things up, let's say, instead of keeping everything on our desktops, which, we were guilty of doing. But once we kind of got over that, it certainly helped us as a small organization to collaborate really easily, and particularly with the hybrid working now as well. So there's a lot of stuff there that you can use. And again, you can get advice. And again, it's about playing about and having a go with those sort of things.
Yes. I should add that there are a lot of free and heavily discounted solutions available through the Charity Digital website. Some of those you do have to be a charity for, but not all of them. And that's kind of part of our reason as an organisation for existing, is to bring more of those to you. Now, we've got a few minutes left, so I'm going to just try and close off the remaining questions. One from Lizelle. Do you have any specific initiatives supporting new small digital organisations focused on minority group? Anyone have a perspective on that?
I know that one of the projects that or digital skills volunteering initiative supported in Northern Ireland was a collaboration between the Nerve Centre, which is a digital organisation here, and PRONI, which is our public records office. And they've worked with a number of different groups, including communities, migrant communities in Northern Ireland, to help them feel more confident about exploring the archives, but then also using digital technology to describe what they found and to interpret what they found. So I know that that's a project that has been working specifically with a range of groups, but including some of the global majority groups that are living now here in Northern Ireland. And I think the thing that they would say there was it was very much about doing some initial engagement work and almost taster work to find out, level of skills, levels of confidence, what people were interested in. I mean, you could apply this almost to any group, but certainly, and any barriers around language, for example, that needed to be overcome. So I know they did some sort of taster and initial engagement work, and then people came forward and volunteered to take part in the wider project. And I think, it was about finding the content that was of most relevance and most interest, and then, putting the support around that to enable them to kind of delve into the archives that were held in the Public Records Office.
That's great. Thanks for that, Margaret. Now, we're just about out of time, so I just want to see whether each of you have a last kind of couple of words that you'd suggest for how heritage organisations, funders and sector support bodies might work better together in the area of digital. Rachel, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, just to flag up that in Wales, we've got a project called the People's Collection, and that's a fantastic project because it's funded by Welsh Government and the National Museum. It's really available for everybody to use, whether you're an individual, community, or a smaller organisation. So if you're on the journey whereby you really want to start kind of putting digital archives out there, you can actually just get training that scheme and actually incorporate your stuff onto their website. So that's a really easy way to start sharing without having to kind of invest in having your own forum. So my advice really is to kind of look at the stakeholders and look at what else is happening in the community that you can tap into with that very initial kind of experimental stage.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel. Delphine?
It's all about dialogues for me. I think we need to have dialogues within organization, because actually the amount of time you can learn from somebody that's sitting just beside you, virtually or physically. I think we need to keep having dialogues. You know, when you're talking to a grant officer, do talk about the topic of digital skills. When you're talking to a sector, you know, if you've got a membership body that represents you, if you're having a conversation with a sector support body, have those conversations. Funders need to keep having dialogues with the sector. People like Margaret, and I know you do, Margaret. I think it's just constantly exchanging. It's not going to change overnight. It's a long game. It's going to take us time, and I think we need to just celebrate it's going to take us time, and just keep talking.
Yeah.
Okay. And Margaret?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree. Keep talking, and also try to maybe just give yourself a bit of time, even if it's only half an hour once a week, to go and look up some of those resources, to do a bit of rooting around to see what's out there, all the stuff on our website, all the stuff on the websites that you guys have as well, and try to link in with others, because you are not alone in this journey, and in the struggle to kind of do these things. And reach out to somebody else and you will get help. And certainly as funders, yes, we need to keep that dialogue going all the time, and listen to what we're hearing from people in the sector.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Well, that's all we've got time for, so we need to wrap up now. I want to thank Margaret, Delphine and Rachel very much for your insights there. I think we covered loads and loads of ground there, so that's been really helpful. Now, for anybody who was here today, maybe missed a little bit of the session or wants to recap any of it, the recordings of all of today's sessions, as well as this one, will be available sometime within the next 24 hours. So if you check back in and look at the sessions tab, you should be able to see that. So our next session will be on content repurposing, looking at quick wins there. So do please join us for that. Suggest you grab a quick break and then come back and join us for that shortly. And thank you again for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of the day.